Hello, my name is Haidar Eid. I am an associate professor of cultural studies at Al-Aqsa University in Gaza. I am also on the steering committee of the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. I'm also a co-founding member of the One Democratic State group. I would like to thank you very much for having me today, and I'm so sorry for not being able to join you in person there for reasons all of you are aware of. I'm also honored to be joining Dr. Hayo Meir, a man I have always admired and I have always wanted to be with, actually. Today I'm supposed to be talking about the situation in Gaza and the events that have been going on since 2006 and the war that took place, or rather the massacre that took place last year in 2009. Now, one of the questions that has been puzzling us as Palestinians is, especially Palestinian activists and intellectuals, is how one can describe a situation such as Gaza's bloodletting, which was described once by a top Israeli army official as a Shoah, which is the Hebrew word for Holocaust. How is one supposed to be able to describe such a situation with language, and English is my second language, with a language that has long been proven to be slippery? Now, where is one to start and finish if one wants a semiological analysis of the dramatic footage of the more than 434 children killed in broad daylight last year? How is one supposed to start describing the desperate cries and screams of children in their fathers' desperate arms, who were attempting, or rather attempted, to save their children's lives? If there were any questions to be asked, they would be about the nature of a hegemonic modern ideology that dehumanizes toddlers, children, pregnant women, and drives soldiers to shoot innocent civilians. It is definitely not the right time for such grandiose philosophical questions. But what is the Palestinian to do when she lives such a crude political reality? Now, my talk is supposed to be a talk by a Palestinian from Gaza to a Western audience. It does not aim to claim to be a reasonable political analysis of what happened in Gaza last year, what we call Gaza 2009. Nor does it claim to be an analysis that investigates the background and expected outcome of what seems to be another looming massacre. It therefore should not fall into the mind-body bourgeois dichotomy. Emotions at this historical junction cannot be ignored. Just rewind any of the infamous videos that you saw last year of children being murdered brutally by Israeli soldiers. Rewind these footages again and again to understand what I am getting at, speaking to you right now from Gaza City. Because as I speak to you right now, I can hear F-16s and drones flying in the skies of Gaza, reminding us of the nature of apartheid Israel. This comes only 1 year after Gaza 2009, in which apartheid Israel massacred more than 1,500 civilians, including, as I said, 434 children, including 120 women, more than 105 elderly people, and so on and so forth. Now, the question, or rather I would call it the unpuzzling question, that Palestinians on the streets of Gaza have been asking and also answering is, how is the Israeli government allowed to literally get away with these war crimes and crimes against humanity as suggested? These words, crimes against humanity and war crimes, They were mentioned by Judge Richard Goldstone himself. Now, the importance, we know very well that the importance of the image in general in the age of mechanical reproduction, and to use Walter Benjamin's definitions, lies in its ability to convey an instant message. Now, for many, the only source of information is what they see on their TV screens. The footage of massacred Palestinian toddlers has therefore become the direct message that Palestinians want to use to convey, right from the beginning of the deadly hermetic siege which has been imposed on Gaza since January 2006. The message is very obvious and very clear. This is our daily political reality. This is where we have reached 17 years after the signing of the Oslo Accords. So much for the peace process and the so-called two-state solution. Now, within this context, the fact that mainstream media outlets such as BBC in your country and CNN in the United States of America, the fact that they have declined showing murdered toddlers footage, is indicative of the extremely important issue of the biased and decontextualized coverage of such events by Western media. In fact, showing some of the dramatic footage of the Gaza massacre accompanied by the CNN reporters, or rather the BBC reporters' comments, was an attempt to empty it of its criminal dimension and of the obvious responsibility of the Israeli occupation forces, and hence it's the responsibility of the Israeli government. Now, to echo just one, Palestinian intellectual, the late Edward Said, and to echo, Noam Chomsky even, how can, the international media, and I want to say actually the Western media rather, be objective when they are controlled by about 5 transnational corporations, all of which have intimate relationships with the American defense industry. Now, was, for example, the 9-month-old Muhammad al-Bura'i only, I'm quoting, a regrettable collateral damage? What about the other 434 children, including the 4 Dardona children targeted in daylight while playing soccer? What about the 11-year-old Safa Abu Shabak, who was shot inside her house in Jabalia while her father had to watch her bleed to death for 4 hours after the Israeli soldiers turned the ambulances back? I remember Safa's story very well because I was listening to the radio in the morning of that day, listening to the pleas of her father, calling upon the Red Crescent, calling upon the Red Cross, calling upon UNRWA, calling upon the United Nations to send an ambulance to save the life of his child. 2 hours passed, 3 hours passed, 5 hours passed, and then the father declared his child dead. What can I say about Samah and Salwa Asaliya, the Samah and Salwa Asaliya sisters, who were also brutally murdered in broad daylight? And the entire Athamni family in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, in the town of Beit Hanun. The Atallah family, whose 3-story house was targeted by an American F-16 fighter. None of them survived. Who will bring back justice to them? Negotiations brokered by President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton? A non-sovereign state on parts of the 1967 borders, parts of the West Bank, and the largest concentration camp on the surface of earth, i.e. the Gaza open-air prison? These children, these families, the pregnant women who were targeted, who were in fact the favorite target of the Israeli soldiers, these people lived a very short life and died refugees. 2/3 of the Palestinians of Gaza are refugees who were kicked out in a process of ethnic cleansing in 1948. They were kicked out of their houses, towns, villages, and cities. This is a fate that seems to be awaiting many of our children in Gaza including 60% of the population of the Gaza Strip, because more than 60% of the population of the Gaza Strip are children below the age of 15. Gaza, my friends, has become a war zone. The biggest concentration camp on earth has become a burial site, a noisy graveyard. The Palestinian body has become exactly like the Jewish body during the Second World War, during the Holocaust. Exactly like the Jewish body was the favorite target of the Nazi soldiers, the Palestinian body has become the ultimate target of the Israeli bullet. The younger, the better. The Palestinian body has, in other words, become the site of justice, or rather injustice. Eliminate the body and it will leave a vacuum that can be occupied. A land without a people, for people without land. The Palestinian people have long realized that the so-called peace process does not challenge or even change the long-held status quo, nor will it allow them to exercise their national and political rights. Whether Sharon or Barak or Olmert or even Benjamin Netanyahu and his foreign minister thug Avigdor Lieberman, the Israeli position is crystal clear. No return to the border of June 4th, 1967. No dismantling of Jewish-only settlements. No return of Palestinian refugees. No backing down on Jerusalem as, quote, the undivided eternal capital city of Israel, unquote, and no sovereign independent Palestinian state with its own military on the western bank of the Jordan River and the Gaza Strip. The best that is on offer is a Bantustan, a reservoir for the natives. Peace within this context has led to more misery for the mere reason that it lacks justice. What has been going on since 1993 is peace industry, peace without justice, and peace without justice is no peace. Palestinians get punished for being shot for the mere fact that they exist in the land of Palestine, for trying to protect themselves, and mostly for just being where they are, as though they should not be there in the first place. Hence the unprecedented brutality, the shelling with heavy artillery, the shooting with American-made F-16s, with Apache helicopters, with phosphorus bombs, what Joseph Conrad calls in his Heart of Darkness, the horror that embodies itself in the faces of the Palestinian children, Muhammad, Safa, Jacqueline, and the rest of those children who lost their lives in Matan Vilnai's death chambers. The Holocaust. Thank you very much for listening to me.